but it's like a golden nectar, probably the most age-worthy bridal or wine that we make.
So are there any specific bottles that you want to touch on in any of your lines to talk about flavor, aroma, food pairings?
I think the most special, unique bottle that we make is called L'Avion, the airplane, and it's a Roussanne with just a touch of Chardonnay. Roussanne is our Dare to Be Great bridal. It is the latest to ripen on the entire vineyard. It's the last to ripen in the southern Rhone as well. It's very difficult to make anywhere near Monocepage in France because you don't have the growing season duration to allow it to fully ripen. Roussanne is named after the color of rust. It's named after the suntan that it gets when it's completely ripe. So again, we don't have rain, we don't have high humidity. We're at 34 degrees latitude, so very intense sunshine in September and October. And then we have a full-time crew that goes through, they pull every leaf away from the Roussanne. It's the one varietal that we actually want the full brunt of our equatorial sunshine hitting. We have to shade Syrah. Certainly we have to shade Sangiovese and Grenache. But Roussanne, we want it tanning. And then once the exterior of the cluster tans, we actually go through and hand rotate every cluster. So I'm a redhead, I don't tan, but my Roussanne can. So hour on the stomach, hour on the back. And then we only pick for L'Avion that perfectly even tanned fruit from the oldest two blocks, including the one runway block. So that old cattle rancher would land a biplane up and down where we planted the Roussanne straight down this little chute, and just loved that idea that it literally looks like the lanes of a landing strip. So went with L'Avion, and there's a runway on the label, but it's like a golden nectar, probably the most age-worthy bridal or wine that we make. I think it ages even longer than any of our high-end reds. And it just is richer and richer, more concentrated. It is a red wine drinker's white. So kind of for food, it runs that fine line where like we love it with Thanksgiving, with turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing and ton of gravy. But then even for like Japanese fare, it goes amazingly. I love it with spice because it's so coating. Actually, like we all think about Riesling for spice. And I get it, that like crisp refreshingness from like beer. But really, if your mouth is burning, the best thing is milk. And Roussanne is so rich, it actually like soothes the mouth and gives you this nice, beautiful coating that I think complements spice a little more. And then the profile of all of our reds, I would say they're full-bodied. They have amazing texture because there's nothing you can do to counter yield, right? If you have tiny grapes packed with flavor, not much juice, that translates to tactile layers that you're not going to get by oak aging or anything else. So my favorite thing about all of our beautiful reds is just like this thick but feathery mouthfeel. And we've been on a journey with all of our reds to become more and more gentle in the winery. So over the decades, we've become more confident in the raw concentration that we have because we're not diluting with irrigation, because we don't get rain. We have this intensity, and we also have high tannin if we're not careful, because there's not much juice and a lot of skin in these tiny grapes. So we went, the long and the short of it, we went from doing the traditional 3 big punch downs a day to doing 3 punch downs during an entire native fermentation. So much more gentle circulations to keep the cap wet, but not actually mashing down all that skin to absorb every bit of tannin and color and richness.
That's a dramatic change for sure.
That was
Wow.
a gradual change, but
Okay.
you know, that took about a decade to get there.
Okay.
So the wine, and then again with the limestone, there's still liveliness. There's a freshness to all of our wines, not just the so fresh, which to me comes from our ability to pick appropriately. So we don't need to wait for dehydration to get richness. A lot of, you know, that's what I've learned to do making Shiraz in Australia is, you know, picking at 19 degrees total alcohol and adding water back and acid and everything else. But when you pick raisins, there's no more terroir, you know, or very little at least. Actually, like you get the signature of the particular vintage when you're picking taut, lively fruit, you know, and that freshness then, to me, that life in the bottle leads to 20 years of age worthiness. If the grapes are dead on arrival to fermenting, what's left to evolve?
Very well said.
Bigger doses. But that getting more and more and more gentle led us to, and all those red wines pair beautifully with any traditional red wine pairing. You know, you name your poison: duck, lamb, mushroom. But if our wines are getting better and better and better, treating them more delicately, what if we don't crush it all? And like, oh yeah, that's called carbonic fermentation. That's what they do in Beaujolais. But leave the grapes whole. And we tried it with Sangiovese, knowing that, you know, Sangiovese is extremely high in both tannin and acid. So even though we're not extracting tannin, you're still going to get nice dryness. And then you're going to have plenty of acidity where you're not going to have tannin to give that balance on the finish and be really refreshing. And we fell in love with it.
You've given us a lot of time. So now what can we do for you? Tell us your website, tell us your social media, tell us any way we can learn more about Stolpman and taste your wines.
Yeah, stolpmanvineyards.com. And then we both have Stolpman Vineyards and Stolpman So Fresh on Instagram. Yeah, and please come and taste in Los Olivos or email us if you're coming, if you want to check out the vineyard. Love to do every month. I do vineyard hikes, and throughout the year, it's really fun to just show, you know, talk about everything I'm talking about dry farming and about food thinning, and look at these tiny little clusters right now that are flowering, and praying that there's no major wind events in the next couple of weeks. And it's just really cool to be out there and actually hike the hills and look at every different varietal and the way we train it, the way it naturally behaves. So yeah, come visit and yeah, buy the wine and love it and buy more of it, and then I'll keep making it.